Welcome, everyone. Before we dive into these stories, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment telling us where you're from and what time you're tuning in. This helps YouTube recommend more stories like this to you. Now let's begin. This collection brings together vivid accounts from people who have endured intense ordeals, encountered baffling events, and battled against all odds to survive. Through their narratives, we explore the raw experiences and chilling realities they uncovered along the way. Hello everyone. Before we dive in, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. That way, YouTube will keep serving you stories like this one. Let's get started. I grew up in a small town in Kentucky. One of those places where everybody knows your name, your business, and your family history going back 3 generations. It was 1976, and I had just turned 17. My life revolved around school, church, and the occasional drive-in movie with my best friend, Ellie. My dad ran a small hardware store on Main Street, and my mom was the kind who ironed pillowcases and insisted on saying grace before every meal, even breakfast. It was quiet and predictable until I met Caleb Turner. Caleb was the son of Judge Raymond Turner, a man whose presence silenced everyone in the room. People either feared or respected him in our town, but Caleb wasn't like his father. He had this charm that made girls forget their backgrounds, a lazy smile, sun-bleached hair, and a way of talking that made you feel like you were the only one who mattered. That summer, we started seeing each other in secret. I told no one, not even Ellie, because I knew the gossip would start, that I wasn't good enough for him. One day, I found out I was pregnant. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, holding a drugstore test I'd bought in another town to avoid being recognized. My hands trembled as I waited for the result. Caleb was the first I told. I was scared, sure, but I also believed he'd be there with me, that we'd figure out together. At first, he just stared at the floor, fighting the inside of his cheek. The next day, he told me his family would take care of everything. I never realized how literal that would be. Within a week, my life was turned upside down. My parents were told I had a breakdown. That was their word for it. Suddenly, I was deemed unwell and needed to stay somewhere quiet to recover. They sent me away to a distant cousin, a woman called Aunt Margaret, living in a rundown farmhouse almost 50 miles away. I had no phone, no car, and no way to reach anyone. My dad didn't even drive me. Caleb's uncle did, silent the whole trip. I stared out the window, feeling like I was disappearing. The farmhouse smelled like dust and mothballs. Aunt Margaret was in her late 60s, wore orthopedic shoes, and always kept her curtains closed. She never asked questions or offered comfort. There was no TV, no radio, and the only books were religious pamphlets and a brittle old Bible. I spent my days watching the empty field from the back window, waiting for something to happen, anything to break the silence. Time stood still. At night, I lay awake, listening to the creaking wood, the wind slipping through cracks, distant coyotes. Aunt Margaret forbade me from going to town. No one back home reached out. Ellie never wrote, and neither did my parents. Months passed. My belly grew along with the quiet. I felt like a ghost trapped in someone else's story. Sometimes I whispered to the baby, "I don't know what they're doing to us, but I promise I'll get you out." One morning, I heard voices outside. Through the front window, I saw Judge Turner's black Buick pull into the driveway, dust still spiraling from the tires. He didn't come inside. Instead, he spoke quietly with Aunt Margaret on the porch. She nodded, eyes downcast. Afterward, she brought me a suitcase and said I needed to pack. They found a better place, she said, offering no explanation. When I asked where, she just pointed to the suitcase and left the room. That night, I barely slept. I feared I'd disappear completely. The next day, Caleb came back. It was the first time I'd seen him in months. He looked pale and thin, like he hadn't slept, yet he wouldn't meet my eyes. Aunt Margaret handed him the suitcase, and he muttered something about a clinic in Ohio, that they would pay for everything. I begged him not to send me away, to tell my parents the truth. That was when he finally snapped, saying it was too late. Things had already been handled. His words sent a chill down my spine. I refused to go anywhere with them. That night, while Aunt Margaret slept, I snuck out the back door with a suitcase she packed for me and walked for hours under the moonlight, following the road. Eventually, I found a gas station with a payphone. I had no money, but the clerk, a skinny kid with long hair and a kind face, let me make a call. I dialed the only number I could remember, Ellie's. She arrived 6 hours later, driving her brother's beat-up Chevy Nova. Seeing me, she broke down in tears. She told me everyone thought I'd been committed out west, that my parents were told not to visit and that I'd asked for space. Caleb had gone back to school as if nothing happened. I hid in Ellie's basement for weeks. Her parents never asked questions, but knew enough to be quiet. Eventually, I found a women's shelter in Louisville where I gave birth to a baby girl with a head full of dark hair. I named her Hope. Years later, I learned the full truth. A drunk cousin of Caleb's had spilled more than he should. The Turners fabricated my mental breakdown, falsified medical records, and paid off a doctor to keep the story straight. They intended to send me away quietly, give up my baby without consent, and erase me from existence. To them, I was a liability and inconvenience. I never saw Caleb again. Last I heard, he followed in his father's footsteps and became a lawyer. I changed my name, moved out of Kentucky, and raised Hope on my own. She doesn't know the whole story yet, and someday I'll tell her. Not to evoke pity, but to show her the lengths some will go to protect power and the strength needed to protect yourself. Even now, some in that town still believe I had a breakdown. Maybe it's better that way. Let them think I disappeared. The truth is, I survived. I'm not one to believe in ghosts or curses, but after what happened recently, I'm not so sure anymore. I live alone in a rental house in Jackson, Mississippi, and up until a few weeks ago, my biggest concerns were just everyday stuff like paying rent and some odd noise my car made when reversing. I usually spend weekends hiking to clear my mind, and a few friends and I plan a day hike about an hour and a half east of Jackson to some quiet public land. It was me, Jordan, Will, and Rachel, people I've known since college. Nothing fancy, just snacks, photos, and no cell service. We tend to wander off the marked trails when they get dull, and that day was no different. Soon, Rachel spotted an animal skull nailed to a tree. We joked it was some strange hunting ritual or southern folk art, but then we noticed more. Dozens of crooked handmade wooden crosses stuck into the ground, strips of dirty clothes tied to branches, old ragged cloth dolls, and melted candles in the dirt. The area felt heavy, almost like the trees were closing in on us. We avoided saying it aloud, but we were all pretty creeped out. I took some photos, close-ups of the crosses, the bones, even a hoodie stained with what looked like dried blood. Will told me to drop it, but I thought maybe I'd share them later on a hiking subreddit as a weird find. None of us dared to venture deeper. There was a thick tree at the center covered in carvings, and more bones nailed to its bark. We just stared silently until Jordan finally said, "We should get out of here." And we did. That night, after posting 3 photos online, nothing revealing about location or people, I got a text. No words, just a photo. It was my driveway, taken from across the street, showing my car and porch light on, taken mere minutes before. I immediately checked outside, but found nothing. Sleep evaded me all night. Every creak and shadow set my nerves on edge. At 3:12 a.m., another photo arrived. A closer shot of my front window, curtains half drawn, and the soft glow of the TV visible. I was in that room at the time. My heart dropped. I flung open the window, called out, but no one was there. I double-checked every lock. I reached out to Jordan the next day, trying not to sound paranoid. He hesitated before admitting he'd gotten a message too. Just a blank screen this time. Rachel and Will hadn't received anything yet. We all shared the same unnerving feeling. Maybe we'd disturbed something best left alone. I deleted the post and the photos, but it felt like too late. I installed the security camera above my front door, hoping for peace of mind, but it didn't help. That very night, there was no new message, so I thought maybe it was over. But when I checked the footage the next morning, a figure stood on my front steps at 2:47 a.m., just standing there for nearly 5 minutes. No knocks, no ringing. The grainy figure wore a dark hood and jeans, something hanging from their neck, maybe a necklace or even bone. When they turned and faced the camera, shadows hid their face. I called the police, showed the footage. They filed a report, but nothing came of it. Later that week, Rachel's cat disappeared. She called me in tears, telling me she found her back door unlocked in the morning, a door she always locked. She now refuses to stay home alone without her brother nearby. Was been tight-lipped but visibly shaken. He started hearing noises at night, branches snapping, soft knocks. We all agreed. We shouldn't have touched that place, shouldn't have taken those photos, shouldn't have posted them online. I kept every light on, even in empty rooms, and felt eyes on me constantly. Anytime I stepped outside, the sense of being watched prickled my skin. The text didn't stop but changed. No more photos, just single words. Repent, return, watch. Sometimes, nothing but the notification tone at 2 or 3 a.m. I stopped reading them, changed my number, but the messages came from untraceable sources, like a constant reminder that someone or something was still out there. Weeks in, I found a crude wooden cross nailed to the tree in my backyard, wrapped in feathers and string. My backyard is locked and fenced. How they got in, I don't know. Police took the report again, but left it at that. I slept in my car 2 blocks away, too scared to be close to the house. Scared whoever was doing this knew I was still there. Then, one day just like that, everything stopped. No more messages, no strange footsteps, no figures on camera. Even the air around the house felt lighter. I never found out who sent those photos or left that cross. Jordan moved out of state. Rachel stopped hiking. Will deleted all his social media. We barely talk now, try and forget. But I know better. I still think of that tree, those carvings, the piles of bones, the feeling of something ancient watching. I don't stray off trail anymore. In fact, I hardly leave town. Sometimes late at night, I think I hear a soft knock somewhere in the house. I freeze and choose not to check, because the worst part isn't the unknown. It's not knowing what we stumbled upon, what we disturbed, or why it followed us at all. Some places are forgotten for a reason, and some secrets are meant to stay buried. I grew up in a tiny Nebraska town, barely marking its place on any map. It was the kind of community where everyone knew your name and your family stories. When I was 14, Halloween was the highlight of the year, but by then, the thrill wasn't just about candy anymore. It was about a contest, a rivalry with our elderly neighbor, Mr. Delvin. Delvin lived in an old brick house at the edge of our road, just before the cornfields swallowed the pavement. He was in his 70s, dressed in his usual high-waisted pants, stained and worn, and truth be told, he despised kids, especially me and my brother Nate. Year after year, Halloween became a battle of pranks between us and Delvin. 5th grade saw us toilet papering his porch. 6th, we slid a fake snake into his mailbox. By 8th grade, we had escalated to fake severed arms planted in his yard and stink bombs lit under his windows. Nate even rigged his speaker among the bushes to scream unexpectedly. Each time, Delvin would storm out, flashlight waving, his croaky voice threatening payback, but he never called our parents or the cops. We assumed it was all bark and no bite. That particular year, Halloween fell on a warm Saturday, making it perfect for staying out late. Nate and I plotted our grand finale for weeks, but passing Delvin's house that evening, we noticed something unusual. His house was decorated, not his usual grumbles or flickering TV static, but actual cheap Halloween decorations. Paper skeletons taped to the windows, a deflating inflatable pumpkin in the yard, and flickering porch lights. This was new. Nate nudged me, whispering, "He's trying to show us up. We can't let that slide." After most trick-or-treaters had cleared out, we crept onto his property, armed with smoke bombs, motion-triggered sound boxes, and a baby doll smeared in fake blood. Nate headed toward the shed near the back fence while I stayed close to the house, searching for a perfect hiding spot for the soundbox. That's when I noticed the inflatable pumpkin slowly deflating, as if stabbed, though no one was around. The whole scene felt staged. Suddenly, the shed door banged open with a clang. Then silence. I called Nate's name, but heard nothing. Approaching the shed, I found a padlock snapped shut. It was supposed to be locked, but Nate didn't have the key. Then I saw a small, blinking battery-powered trail camera mounted high on the shed's corner. Below it was a cardboard sign nailed to the wall that read, "Tricked." It hit me. The prank had been turned on us. Delvin was watching all along. My stomach dropped. I pulled at the lock, but it wouldn't budge. From inside, I heard faint shuffling and muffled noises. Nate, gagged and trapped. Panic surged through me, but I was frozen there under the street lamp, heart pounding, knowing I had to get help. I couldn't leave him locked in there alone. I found a rotting basement window and pried it open just enough to slip inside. The basement smelled stale, thick with mildew, cluttered with old tools and dust-covered Halloween props. Creeping up the stairs quietly, I found a kitchen with a flashlight still warm on the table. Delvin had just been there. Unlocking the back door, I raced to the shed and used the screwdriver to wedge open the hinge bolt from the outside. Nate was pale, sitting on the floor, knees to chest, with duct tape on his wrists. The walls inside the shed were plastered with photos, dozens of them, taken over the years of us walking past the house, dressed up for Halloween, and even through our bedroom windows. Delvin hadn't called the cops because his punishment was silent and certain. He'd been watching us all along. We didn't speak afterward, just ran away. From that Halloween forward, Delvin kept up the same cheap decorations every year. Not for the holiday, but as a reminder, a warning that he was still watching. Years later, when I drive past that house, I can still feel that buzzing under my skin, the unsettling awareness that some games are far darker than you ever imagine. And sometimes the person you think is the victim is the one holding all the secrets. I'm 20 now, but this all started when I was 18, during my senior year of high school in a small Illinois town where everyone kind of knows everyone, and secrets don't stay hidden for long. At that time, I was dating Brooke, someone new, and things are going well. But then, out of nowhere, Megan, a girl from my past whom I hadn't spoken to since middle school, reached out to me. We used to date back in 7th grade. Not seriously, just holding hands at lunch and texting after school. So, receiving her message on Instagram felt innocent at first. She said she saw one of my posts and wanted to say hi. Our exchange was light and casual initially. I told her about Brooke, and she said she was happy for me and hoped we could catch up someday. I didn't suspect any trouble, but gradually, her messages grew more frequent, longer, and started arriving at odd hours, 2 or 3 a.m., with paragraphs about missing how we used to talk, never getting over me, and how seeing me with Brooke made her physically sick. I showed Brooke the messages. She laughed it off, but I knew deep down it bothered her. Things escalated quickly. Megan began showing up where she had no reason to be. One Saturday, Brooke and I went to our usual diner, and her Megan was sitting alone in a booth just across from us, pretending not to notice. She didn't order anything, just stared. Brooke was visibly shaken. Then Brooke started receiving strange DMs from a burner account with no profile picture or name. Just nasty messages like, "He'll leave you like he left me," and "You're just a placeholder." At first, we thought it was a random troll, but then came the personal photos, stuff I'd sent to Megan back when we were kids. Embarrassing ones, now altered to look recent. She'd been leaking them into group chats at school. Suddenly, people I hadn't heard from in months were messaging me, some feigning concern, others gossiping. In a small town, word spreads fast, and suddenly I wasn't just the guy with the stalker ex. I was that guy from those pictures. The humiliation was overwhelming. Brooke tried to stay strong, but I saw the toll it was taking. She withdrew from social media and school, eventually asking for a break from me. I don't blame her. None of us signed up for this. Meanwhile, Megan kept ramping up. I noticed her car parked near my house at night, a black Nissan Altima, once around 11 p.m. I stepped outside to take out the trash and saw it idling across the street, lights off, pulling away as I stepped on the porch. Another night, someone knocked on my bedroom window at 2 a.m., but when I looked, no one was there, just that same car parked down the block. I tried telling my parents, but my dad brushed it off as girls being emotional, and my mom suggested blocking Megan. It wasn't that simple. She just created new accounts and kept sending twisted messages. I began losing sleep, obsessively checking my phone and front window at night. Each notification made my heart drop. I was terrified, not because I thought she'd hurt me physically, but because she was capable of anything, crossing every boundary with no shame, and no one truly saw what was happening for what it was. The school counselor said it was out of their hands since it was online and off campus, making things worse. Megan grew more brazen. One day, I found a note on my car windshield in the school parking lot. Written in red Sharpie, it said, "I see the way you look at her. You never looked at me like that." That was when I started parking off school grounds, stopped talking to people, even deleted my social media for a while. But Megan always found a way to remind me she was still watching. The final straw came when she showed up at Brooke's house. Brooke called me in tears, saying someone had been knocking nonstop on her bedroom window, but vanished when her dad emerged with a flashlight. She swore she saw Megan's face just before she ducked away. That night, I drove over and called the police from the driveway. They took a report, but without evidence, couldn't do much. Megan denied everything and claimed we were the ones harassing her. Somehow, she flipped the story. Brooke's parents told her to block me, wanted a distance from the chaos. After that night, Megan disappeared from my life. No more messages, no parked car. Whether someone talked to her, she lost interest, or moved on, I never found out. But the damage was done. Brooke and I never truly recovered, and whispers still echo through school hallways like some inside joke. I keep my head down now, rarely bringing it up. People either don't believe me or think I'm exaggerating. I checked Megan's Instagram a few times out of curiosity. She seems happy, engaged to someone in another town, with a normal life. Sometimes I wonder if he knows about the obsessive side she once had. Maybe she changed, or maybe I was just a chapter she couldn't let go of. I'll never understand how someone I'd barely dated could wreak such havoc years later. It doesn't make sense. I don't know what snapped in her, or why she fixated on me like that. I still get anxiety seeing a black Nissan Altima or accepting unknown follow requests. It's been almost 2 years, and while I want to say I've moved on, I haven't. I sometimes wonder if she's still watching, waiting for the right moment, or if this nightmare will start again out of nowhere, just like it did the first time. I relocated to a quiet rural area in Missouri last year, seeking a fresh start after a tough divorce. At 38, I was eager for peace, away from the chaos. I bought a simple 2-bedroom home just outside Cassville, appreciating the space and solitude. About 2 weeks after settling in, I decided to build a privacy fence along the back edge of the property to separate myself from the adjacent woods. Borrowing an auger from a neighbor, I started digging the holes one Saturday morning, enjoying the serene surroundings, the birds singing, the soft soil, the comfort of my coffee in hand. During the digging, I struck something unusual in the 4th hole. At first, I thought it was a root, but on closer inspection, I uncovered bone long, curved with a clean break. It looked like part of skull, not from any animal I'd recognized. The tightly packed soil had concealed what seemed to be more than just a single bone, possibly a buried body. Uneasy, I stopped digging and immediately covered the spot back up, retreating indoors. Unsure of the protocol for such a find, I called the sheriff department. Within an hour, Sheriff Dalton arrived, a middle-aged man polished in his uniform, but seeming more like he was going through the motions than genuinely concerned. I showed him the spot and pointed out the bones, but he barely glanced at them before dismissing the find as likely animal remains, probably a cow or hunting dog buried there long ago. When I suggested testing or further investigation, he shook his head, refusing further action. His dismissal didn't sit well with me. It felt too quick, too careless for what I knew those bones represented. But as a newcomer, I hesitated to push him. Later that day, while sitting on my porch, I mulled over what had happened. Then the sheriff showed up again, this time out of uniform and bearing coffees. He made a casual visit, chatting about local life, but before long, he steered the conversation toward the land, subtly indicating interest in buying it quietly, with cash off the record and no real estate hassle. His smile seemed friendly, but his eyes betrayed a hidden agenda. After he left, I noticed fresh red-tinged mud on his SUV's wheels, the exact kind from my yard, as if he'd been at the spot recently. That night, sleep escaped me as every creak in the house felt amplified. The sheriff's visit replayed in my mind, his manner, the mud on his tires. Unable to resist, I went out with a flashlight to inspect the fence line again. Over the place where I'd dug, the ground looked altered, pressed down differently, with an indentation I was certain hadn't been there before. I hadn't touched that spot, and no one else had access. Something or someone had disturbed that soil. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I called a trusted college friend, Jason, a forensic technician in Springfield. He agreed to come by the following weekend to examine the soil and take samples. But 2 days before Jason's visit, I returned from errands to find my front door slightly ajar. Nothing was stolen except my laptop, which had been on the dining room table. I didn't report it. There was no clear culprit, and if anyone was involved, making waves seemed risky. When Jason arrived, the hole had already been filled in, packed tighter than I'd ever done it, and even topped with rocks, as if someone wanted it hidden for good. He collected soil samples, but the results were inconclusive. Too little evidence to say definitively what lay beneath. Despite that, I sensed he suspected something darker than just earth and bones. A month later, I put the house back on the market and sold it to a retired couple seeking peace. I never told him why I left. Sheriff Dalton vanished from my life after that. His SUV never appeared again in my area. Though I've since moved twice, every time I see a patrol car, that same heavy feeling tightens my chest. I still don't know what was buried in my backyard, but I'm certain it wasn't a cow. And I've learned firsthand that some secrets are buried for a reason, and some will be fiercely protected by those who wish to keep them hidden. During my second year of college, I moved into a small fourplex on the outskirts of town, tucked behind an abandoned gas station and some vacant lots. Affording anything else without a roommate was impossible, so this place seemed like a decent option. My unit was on the second floor, and a landlord informed me that the apartment above mine had been vacant for over a year. Nobody's been up there since the last tenant left, he said, trying to assure me. Initially, the quiet was a relief. The walls were thin, but with no one above. I didn't have to worry about loud music or late-night stomping. However, around 2 a.m., I started hearing slow, deliberate footsteps crossing above me. At first, I paused my music, questioning if I was imagining it, but the pacing continued, uneven like someone shifting weight or pacing nervously. I knocked on the ceiling with a broom handle, hoping to get a response from whoever might be up there, but there was nothing. When I contacted the landlord, he brushed it off, suggesting it was probably just pipes creaking, even though I knew better. But the sounds persisted, becoming a nightly occurrence, each time accompanied by a heavier, oppressive feeling in the air. I began waking abruptly, heart pounding, convinced someone was watching me. No signs of break-ins. All doors and windows locked tight, yet the unease lingered. One night, after hearing what sounded like something heavy dropping upstairs, I grabbed a flashlight and ventured to the stairwell door leading to the vacant apartment. To my shock, the doorknob was hanging loosely, and the doorframe was splintered, as if someone had forced their way in. The stairwell reeked of dust and mildew. As I ascended the steps, the beam of my flashlight caught strange scuff marks on the walls, like someone had dragged their hand along them. The top door stood cracked open just enough to see inside. I pushed it wide, revealing complete darkness and emptiness except for a single item, an old, torn mattress lying in the center of the floor directly above my bedroom. As I illuminated the stained fabric, I saw dark reddish-brown blotches soaked deep into it, bloodstains unmistakably old, but unsettling nonetheless. My stomach churned, and I hurried back downstairs, heart hammering. That night, I locked every bolt and wedged a chair under the doorknob for added security, barely daring to breathe. Around 3:30 a.m., the footsteps resumed, but this time escalated to sounds of something dragging across the ceiling, followed by 3 loud thuds, like someone dropping to their knees directly above me. It didn't echo hollowly. It sounded dense and immediate, as if the upper room and mine were barely separated. I hesitated to call the police, fearing I'd sound insane, admitting I broke into a vacant unit only to find a blood-stained mattress and footsteps. When I returned during daylight to photograph the damaged door, the landlord dismissed me, insisting the door was reinforced months ago and couldn't have been damaged. He had no keys to the unit and suggested I was just stressed and should get more rest. His lack of concern deepened my isolation and fear. In the following days, no noises or disturbances occurred, but the silence felt even more menacing, like something lurking, biding its time. Shadows flickered at the edge of my vision. I stopped sleeping properly and avoided my apartment whenever possible. After returning from a weekend away, I noticed 3 perfectly shaped dents in the ceiling of my bedroom. Small, circular, spaced like knees landing hard. They weren't there before. That night, I moved out, breaking my lease early and never looked back. I never told anyone, fearing disbelief or ridicule. Even now, over a year later, the memories haunt me. The broken lock repaired overnight, the bloodied mattress, the ominous dents in the ceiling, and the unshakable feeling that someone was always just above me, watching. Whatever haunted that upstairs apartment, I'm certain it knew I was there, and I'm certain I never want to experience anything like it again. I'm not the type to believe in ghosts or anything like that, but after what happened last September, I'm not so sure anymore. I'm 32 now, freshly divorced and craving solitude, so I booked a hunting cabin deep in Montana. Remote, no neighbors, no self-service. Just the kind of place someone wants when they need to escape everything. The first few days were peaceful. I cooked, read, and enjoyed early morning coffees by the stream near the cabin. But then subtle oddities started. My trail mix was lighter than I remembered, a chill draft despite locked doors and windows, and footprints on the porch that shouldn't have been there. Not animal prints, boots, human boots. They circled the cabin like someone was watching me. At night, the creaking sounds on the roof grew more distinct, steps moving slowly above me. I tried convincing myself it was just the wind or animals, but something felt wrong. Then, one morning, I found a can of chili, something I hadn't touched, gone. That was the moment it hit me. Someone had been inside my cabin. While I'd been sleeping, I bought a trail camera from the nearest town and set it up pointing to the back trail, hoping to catch wildlife, but deep down wanting to catch whoever had been sneaking around. The following morning, I pulled the footage, heart pounding. Most clips were ordinary, squirrels, deer. Then at 2:47 a.m., there he was, a man standing silently at the edge of the trees, facing the cabin, dressed in a dark hoodie, motionless, his face hidden in shadow. He didn't move for nearly 5 minutes, then the footage cuts. I watched that clip a dozen times, hoping it was a trick of the light, but it wasn't. Someone was out there, watching me, waiting. After that night, I started locking the bedroom door from the inside and even placed little stick markers near the door handle to see if anyone moved them. The next morning, one stick was gone. Another can of chili disappeared. I noticed a smear of mud on the inside door handle, proof someone had entered while I was inside. That broke something in me. I packed my things immediately, locked up the cabin, and left without a backward glance. I didn't even report it. Who would believe me? A shadowy figure silently watching in the woods. No proof beyond the footage, The last shot on the camera was of the man again, closer this time, maybe 20 feet from the cabin, holding something I couldn't identify. It looked like a tool or a stick, gripped tightly and pointed down, but his gaze was fixed directly at the camera. Since then, I've tried to move past it, changed apartments, changed my locks, even got a dog. But that feeling of being observed, of someone patient and calm lingering just out of sight, never leaves. He wasn't trying to break in. He was waiting. Waiting for what? I don't know, and I don't want to know. Whatever that was at the cabin, it belonged there, or perhaps it belonged to that patch of forest itself. I'll never rent a remote cabin again. Sometimes late at night, I still wake up at exactly 2:47 a.m., heart pounding, hearing footsteps on a roof, and see that shadowed figure standing at the edge of the trees, silently watching. I moved back to Arkansas when I was 25 to help my dad after his stroke, having just left my job in Nashville. I was trying to adjust to a much slower pace of life in a small town. Most days were spent running errands, managing his medications, and doing the usual family stuff. One night, I was driving home from friend's place about an hour away, choosing a longer, older route through the hills to avoid construction on the main road. It was around 11 p.m., completely dark except for the stars and the trees, closing in on the narrow two-lane road. My phone had no signal, but that wasn't unusual out there. I had the windows cracked and was listening to an old playlist when headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. At first, I wasn't worried, just thinking it was another car or truck. But then that old pickup started speeding up, getting uncomfortably close. It looked like a late 80s or early 90s model, boxy shape, and its headlights shook as it hit bumps. It began flashing its high beams at me in short bursts. I slowed down and tapped my brakes, hoping to signal if my taillights were out, but the flashing didn't stop. In fact, it became more aggressive, longer bursts without pause. The truck wasn't trying past me. Even when a road briefly opened up, it stayed glued to my bumper, moving smoothly, deliberately, like its driver had nothing better to do than follow me. After about 15 tense minutes gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached, I spotted a gas station up ahead. It was an old Shell station about which I'd stopped once before. Usually it closed around 10 p.m., but I didn't care. I needed a well-lit place with people, or at least cameras. I pulled in, glancing back to see if the truck was following me, but it wasn't. At first, I thought maybe it had turned off somewhere, but there were no side roads for miles. The station was closed, the door chained, and a sign saying they'd be back at 6 a.m. But the overhead lights by the pumps were bright enough to offer some comfort. I got out, pretended to check my tires just to calm my nerves, constantly looking back toward the road, expecting the truck to reappear. After sitting in my car for a few minutes with the engine running and doors locked, I decided to head home. As I pulled out, something caught my eye. Fresh tire tracks in the dirt beside the lot, deep and clear. They looked like someone had pulled in, idled for a bit, then turned around and left. I stepped out and followed the tracks with my eyes. They led right back to the highway, the same way I had come. The next morning, I called the gas station and spoke to a guy named Marcus, who said their cameras had footage and kindly offered to check. Driving back around noon, I was still shaken but had to know what the cameras showed. Marcus looked puzzled. According to the footage, my car pulled in at exactly 11:08 p.m. No surprises there. But just 5 minutes before, at 11:03 p.m., that same old pickup had already pulled in, idled for 2 minutes, then backed out and drove away. There was no footage of the truck ever following me on the road. It had been gone before I even arrived. I asked Marcus if there could be a blind spot or gaps in the footage, but he rewound and played it frame by frame. I saw it clearly. My car driving in, empty road behind me, no truck, no headlights. It made me sick to my stomach. The truck had been riding my bumper, flashing its brights, but the cameras showed it had left before I got there. Marcus said this wasn't the first time someone had asked about strange footage like this. Apparently, the old truck had followed others too. People sometimes came in asking about weird vehicles or figures shown on the cameras that just didn't make sense. Most left and never returned. I thanked him and got in my car, glancing one last time around the lot. No tire tracks remained. No hint of the flickering headlights in the trees. But I still felt like something was watching. Since then, I've only driven that road a few times, and always during the day, never alone. The truck never showed up again, and I'm left with no answers. I know what I experienced, the flashing lights, the pressure in the air, the fear that clung to me like a second skin. I keep wondering, was the truck trying to warn me, intimidate me, or was it intent on something else? Whatever the case, that encounter has left a fear that lingers, a ghost that never fades completely. The stories shared reveal a profound theme, the relentless fight to endure and face fears. Whether those fears arise from personal struggles, societal pressures, or events beyond explanation, each narrative underscores the invisible forces capable of unsettling one's existence and highlights the courage needed to confront and overcome them. If you found these accounts of harrowing survival and unexplained encounters compelling or relatable, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't hesitate to subscribe for more fascinating stories like these. Your engagement helps bring more experiences like these to light.